whispering while you cuddle near me, whispering so no one can hear me. Each little whisper seems to cheer me. I know it's true, there's no one dear but you. You're whispering why you never leave me, whispering why you never grieve me, whisper and say that you believe me, whispering that I love you. Hey friends, today we are continuing looking at the song Whispering. We did a solo uke arrangement of this earlier in the week, which I'll link to down below because the chord voicings that we used in that are really almost identical to what we're using in here. So I won't be talking too much about just specific chord voicings, but what we're going to talk about here is the intro, and then we're going to also work on just a few different substitutions that are commonly used for this song throughout the years. It's great to have some other options for chords throughout a song instead of always playing the same exact ones. And they're also important to know in case you're playing this with someone else and they happen to use slightly different chords than you have learned for this song. They're not always just one set of correct chords for every tune. So let's look at the intro first. The intro we're doing very similar to what we did in the solo piece of this, which is really going through a 1-6-2-5 progression in the key of C with the melody over top. So what do I mean by that? We're going to play 4 different chords with the same melodic line over top and just strum through it. So what we're doing is echoing the beginning of the melody, which is C, B, C, D, C, B, C. So that's all 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret, 5th fret, 3rd fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. So I just play that and try that melody with me. So it's gonna sound like this. So that's the entire intro right there, and now we're just going to put different chords underneath of it to give a sense of motion, although we're really just reiterating this phrase over and over. So we're going to start on a C major chord, which means that all you have to do is just play the A string, everything else is open. So for the first 2 measures, it'll be... And then we're going to go to a C diminished chord here, 2, 3, 2, 3. And we're going to do the same exact thing. And then we go to a D minor 7th, or our 2 chord, and do the same thing. Now this is all going to be with our pinky this time, so this one's a little tough. And then we're just going to play a G 7th chord. We're going to open up the A string and make it a G9. And then on the last beat, we can just turn this into a G7 sharp 5, which means we're going to be adding a D sharp on the 3rd fret of our C string. So here's the entire intro of the song, nice and slowly. So some pretty basic chords there and just a simple melodic line moving on the A string to get us into the song. Now once we're in here, the chords are fairly simple. These are mostly probably open position chords that you're already familiar with. Now in bar 3, we have that funky little B7th chord. We're going from C to B7th, which is an weird change, and one substitution that you could use here, and was used especially in many of the early recordings of this song, in lieu of a B7th chord and just going down the half step, we actually use a C diminished 7th chord. And you might ask yourself why this works in this context. When we look at a B7th chord, we have B, D sharp, F sharp, and A. Those are the notes in our chord. A C diminished 7th chord has C, E flat, G flat, and B double flat. So what the heck, that doesn't sound like any of the same chord. But although we call the notes differently in the C diminished 7th chord, if we look at this, the C itself is the only difference. The E flat that we have is the same as a D sharp. The G flat that we have is the same as the F sharp in the B7th chord. The B double flat, or the fully diminished 7th, is the same as an A, the 7th of our B7th chord. So functionally, these chords are very, very similar. We only have one note difference, and that in and of itself is the root. Now, I prefer the B7th here because we start on a B natural in the melody. So we'd be doing this odd sort of suspension with a major 7th chord if we use the C diminished 7th, but it is a substitution that people do use quite frequently. So then we go around, we go back to the C, and then we come down to an A7 with our sharp 5. And many times you can leave the extensions out, but in this bar, it's kind of important to use that sharp 5. That's our melody note. So we're singing this E sharp, or F, it's the same note. And then we resolve it down, so we release that tension on the last bar of the line. From there we go to a D7th. When we have this D7th chord, we could conceivably use a D9 chord here. A D9 chord is based off of our D7th chord, but we're adding an E, or the 9th, the 2nd scale degree, to it, which is echoed throughout the melody. We have that E twice in there. So you could play an E9 by voicing 2, 2, open, 3. So we have this very open sounding D9th chord or a D7, and you can interchange between the two of them. Now after this, it goes back and forth between a D minor 7th to a G7th. Many people just play a G7th for both of these bars. It's not necessarily needed to go back and forth between the two. It doesn't support the melody much more, so just know that some people will just play a G7th after this. And then as we go through, we really just reiterate the main theme again. Everything's the same until we get to the last line of the song. When we get to the D minor chord here, instead of it going back and forth between D minor and G, we're now walking up because the melody's D, E, F, G. We're walking all the way up. And what happens really in the original recordings of this is we go back and forth every beat. We go D minor 7th, A 7th, D minor 7th, A 7th. And then as we reach this D minor here, the last time we go to an F minor 6th, which might seem like kind of an odd chord in this context to end out the tune. But this is actually something that we see quite frequently. We've worked on many tunes before. I'll See You in My Dreams is probably the most popular of them, that start on our 4 chord. So if we were in the key of C, which we're in right now, that would be starting on F, but it would be an F 6th chord. And our 6th chords are really the same as minor 7th chords. So this D minor 7th is the same thing as an F 6th, and then we lead it to an F minor 6th by just adding this A flat here. Just 2 notes in common with our dominant chord, the G7th. We have a D and an F in here. So our ear is being led back really through a 4-6 chord to a 4 minor 6 chord to 1. That's a little cadence that you've probably heard many times throughout the year. And what it's really doing is substituting for your typical 2, 5, 1, or D minor, G7th, C chord. So there's just a few little tricks that you can throw in here, and it's important to start to understand the theory of these tunes and how they're pieced together. The more that you begin to understand these common little progressions, you'll start to see them crop up more and more in the songs that you learn. And if you put the work into understanding these once, it'll benefit you very much in the future. I'll see y'all next week.